Hello and welcome back to the Stronghold. I'm the Magi, and today in the studio I am joined by the one, the only. Wait, what do you mean we got the wrong hammer? Well, shit, this is just super awkward, man. I'm so sorry. Do you need a lift to the airport or anything? You're good? Okay. But before we get into all that, we here at the Stronghold are officially on the road to 1,000 subs. And guess what? When we get there, we're going to give away an account. So if you're part of the 2/3 of viewers that routinely watch my content but haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and get in, player, because we're going to be doing some magic. Now, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, right. Alright, so this is more or less what you're looking for in your opening hand. The ability to play Scamp on 1 and then Hammer and Resolute Strike on 2. We are a mana short unless we draw one, and there's a strong possibility that we will. Since I did mulligan a couple times, I'm going to be throwing back Sacred Peaks there, and also the Blade Master to try and help us get there. But this is the basic idea of what you're trying to get in your hand, is that 3-piece combination. And what's the other one we want to go? We'll go for Blade there. So hopefully we draw a second land here. And of course, we did not. We'll auto-pay that. Got one more shot at the land. They're turning things sideways. Alright, we got the land. So we will drop that, and we will throw Hammer. Resolute Strike is an instant, so we can set up for the swing. Of course, we're only against Smarky, but a real opponent might see some things coming. So we're going to Resolute Strike here. We will attach an equipment. We make contact for 13, and then Cacophony's sacrifice trigger happens, so we do that. And we say goodbye to our opponent on turn 2. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Alright, so now that we've seen a little bit of what the deck can do, let's talk about trying to build this deck from a budget perspective. And of course, right now the build is that red-white version that you saw because it is so accessible through standard. As I'm sure you have figured out, this deck is very much a glass cannon. It is probably never going to be more than a meme-style Tier 3 deck, but it is a lot of fun to play. But that combination is not necessarily going to be for everyone. So I think one of the best ways that you can address a deck like this and kind of take a dry run, test it out, see whether it's appealing to you, find out what cards you have in your collection already, what cards interact well together, what might be lesser cards to consider running, is to put together a historic Brawl version of the deck, because of course that is a singleton format, so you can play around very functionally with just a single copy of each card and test things out at your own speed. Let's take a look at some of the individual card choices here so you can start making decisions to build this deck for yourself. Of course, starting things off, we've chosen Bruenor Battlehammer as our commander for this deck as an uncommon. Even if you need to drop a wild card on this, it's relatively cheap. And Bruenor, I believe, was part of the new player experience for that year. So a lot of you that have been around for a while are going to have a copy of this. And of course, Bruenor was not hard to come by as an uncommon if you were drafting and playing at that time. From there, this first column is all cards that are not Explorer legal. They are not standard legal. These are strictly for historic. A lot of them come from the alchemy section of the game. So these might be cards that you need to give some thought to before just blindly crafting them, but they generally fit the theme and concept of the deck and give a nice area to explore, particularly if you might already have some of these in your collection. Kemba's Outfitter, of course, is just all about equipping things on the super cheap, which is really what this deck is all about. Fencing Ace from your new player experience is a cheap creature with double strike. And Soldiers of the Watch, Goblin Morale Sergeant, Patchwork Resolute, all of those are just efficient creatures that fit either the primary equipment theme of the deck or the soldier sub theme that I have inserted. Hexgold Sledge, of course, is just right on par with the equipment concept here. Two-handed axe not only is an equipment in itself, but can also be used as an instant to give double strike to a creature. Faceless Agent is one of those, if you're going to play any sort of tribal historic or tribal historic brawl, this is a common that is literally every single tribe and well worth a common wild card. Sea Tower Imprisonment is another one of those highly efficient cards worth considering, and Bladehold Cleaver is, I believe, the only rare in this column, but it fits very nicely into that equipment sub-theme. But again, all of these cards that we just talked about are all either alchemy cards or historic brawl only. They cannot be played in Explorer or Standard, so be mindful about your crafting there. Sorry about the jump cut there, but now let's talk about the commons and uncommons that I believe are all Explorer playable here. The next column here is Resolute Strike, Fireblade Charger, and Colossus Hammer, which is basically the core of a deck like this. All of your Hammer Time decks basically revolve around getting a good creature like Fireblade Charger into play, and then on turn 2 dropping the hammer and equipping it for free with Resolute Strike onto the Charger and swinging effectively for the win. Really good stuff. If everything else here is not worth considering, this is really the core of your deck here. And we're talking about 3 wild cards, 2 uncommons, 1 common, to really start playing around this deck concept and seeing if this is something you like. Now beyond that, we've got 5 cards that kind of fit the theme from that common and uncommon wild card perspective. None of these next 5 cards are essential, but Armory lets you search up an aura or equipment card and put it into your hand. That's pretty good stuff, particularly for a utility land. All That Glitters is one of those cornerstone cards. Really, there's entire budget decks built around this. It is an aura, so it is subject to card advantage issues. But the enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control. So you can make something really busted big here with All That Glitters. Plate Armor, this is just a generic equipment that kind of fits the theme. Honestly, I probably should have had this in the first column where we talked about the alchemy, because this card is significantly better in historic than it is in Explorer. So worth considering, and this may be a card that a lot of you already own. Cord Blade Master, this is one of those cards that is kind of getting phased out of the more serious 60 card builds, but a warrior itself, a 2-drop, a 1/1. It has double strike, and equipped warriors you control have double strike. All very good sub-themes going on, and this is a card that some of you may already own. It's certainly worth crafting one for this version of the deck. But if you're looking to build the more, I hesitate to call it, serious 60 card version, this might be a card to skip. Similarly, the Warlord here is the Signpost uncommon, and a 3/3. Other warriors you control get +1/+1. He's just kind of a lord effect for a lot of the other cards going on here. Now, continuing the wild card conversation, I've got 5 here that either are almost required for this style of deck, or just generally good enough to make their way into your collection, whether you end up really dedicated to this style of deck or not. The first is Fabled Passage. This is one of the only rare lands I currently recommend for crafting in either Historic or Explorer, because unlike your general dual color rare lands, this card can find its way into every single dual color deck that you play between now and the end of Arena. This is a card you will get a lot of use out of. Sigarda's Aid is another cheat effect to help you do dirty things with equipments much faster than you're supposed to. In the serious builds of the deck, the 60 card versions, really 4 copies on this is the mainstay right now. This just came to us, of course, with the Shadows over Innistrad remastered release. But I will say this card really does not see play anywhere else. So be sure about this style of deck, the Hammer Time strategy. Be sure this is something you want to play before you craft these cards. On the other hand, Shadow Spear not only works very well in this Hammer Time deck as kind of a 5th go-to equipment, but this is a absolute mainstay staple for Historic and to a lesser degree Explorer. This is going to make its way into so many decks, particularly a 1-of copy for Historic Brawl. Similarly, a Solemn Simulacrum is a card that will fit in every single deck due to its colorless nature, and it is the walking, talking epitome of card advantage, a 4-mana 2/2. When it ETBs, you search up a basic land card. When it dies, you draw a card. It just gives you so much value. If you're looking for the last card to play in pretty much any build, this is a wild card that you will not soon regret. Last up here in this category, we've got the red mythic staple of Embercleave, and I think this is probably the only mythic that I talk about anywhere in this list. Embercleave is the epitome of all the mono red rush decks. It is both Historic and Explorer legal. A 1-of copy for a deck like this, particularly in Historic Brawl, is just really quite nice. And of course, mono red is a staple deck in almost any single format, and this is a card you will play forever and ever and ever. All right, next up we've got the Manabase, and I'm just going to keep this really simple. This is a very simplified example of what a Manabase for a deck like this should look like. Very simply put, use what you have and don't worry about specific cards or crafting things. The one thing outside of that might be Labyrinth here. This is one of those rare lands that serves very well in Brawl decks in particular. By no means a must-have, but something that's worth considering. Otherwise, just use what you have here. Beyond that, our biggest column here, and this is the way I like to try and build the Eternal format budget decks. A lot of cards that are available to us in Standard that most of us are going to have at least 1 copy of. A lot of this stuff comes in your new player experience, or are cards that were very draftable, etc., etc. From there, we've got the rares, and if you'll excuse me, the Breach and Protocol, I'm going to jump to the very last column here. These 6-7 cards are all rares from the current Standard environment that are either part of your new player experience, cards that you should feel very comfortable crafting, or cards that are very easily acquired through things like the jump-in packs. From there, we've got the last 4 cards, and really there's one here in particular that I think is one of the higher value cards here, and that of course is Kemba, the Enduring. just because of his synergies with equipment. When he comes into play, when another cat comes into play, they can pick up an equipment, and really that's what this style deck is all about. The other three that I have included here are just good cards or cards that kind of fit with the synergy. Myrel, this is something that you probably want for your mono white soldiers, your blue white soldiers. Astor, I think I'm saying that right, just fits very well in equipment decks, as does Danitha. In fact, Danitha lets you tutor up something. Myrel, Astor, and Danitha are by no means necessary cards, and you could fill these slots with anything else. They just happen to fit the deck synergies and concepts a little better than average. And folks, before you go, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on a thing. Because I know I can't change the Magic economy all by myself, but I think we can.